Welcome to my spontaneous studio in my car in a parking lot. It is the only place that I have to film anything right now that is remotely reasonable. I'm living, as some of you know, in hotels while I'm waiting for flights so I can move. It's been quite the adventure, so I'm just taking it day by day and doing what I can. But I wanted to just make a very quick video. I promise it will be quick this time, to elaborate on some of the points that I made on the podcast this week, because I think it's a really important topic, and I am thinking a lot about it and thinking about how I want to talk about it and what I'm actually really trying to say. So for those of you who didn't listen or are unfamiliar, I have a podcast every week with Dr. Lyle and Nate Gershfeld called Beat Your Genes. And we talk about sort of practical applications of evolutionary psychology to everyday life and clinical problems. And one of the most common questions that we get, or the common genre of questions that we get, is romantic problems. People dealing with problems in their relationships, problems finding people that are suitable for them, keeping people who are suitable for them, all of the various shenanigans that go along with romantic questions. And evolutionary psychology is a uniquely useful tool for really sorting through the insane chaos of all of those sets of problems. It's been profoundly helpful for me in my own life, and I know that it's a great aid to clients on, with romantic issues and everything else. So I am an absolute true believer in the clinical utility of evolutionary psychology, and I don't mean to suggest for a second that that's not the case. But what I have noticed in my own clinical practice is that a lot of people, and specifically a lot of women, and specifically a lot of highly conscientious women with very conscientious personalities, who are very already concerned with their appearance and what we would call in evolutionary psychology somewhat coldly mate value, already kind of hung up and worried about those topics, when they encounter the thinking on these questions in EP, it can really cause them a lot of distress, to the point where it starts to undermine their enjoyment of their own life, because they are taking on the truths of male-female dynamics throughout the ages and what is really driving the mechanisms of romance and attraction, and they're trying to hack it in such a way that they're making it their full-time job. And so we got a question this week on the podcast, which is very representative of questions that I get all the time from clients. And it was essentially a woman turning 30 and concerned that she was aging out of competition, that she was not going to be as competitive with younger women for the potential mates that she might want to be seeking in life. And so she was phrasing the question in such a way that was, how can I make myself more competitive? How can I even sort of create the illusion of being younger, and being able to compete on the same level as a 20-year-old or a 25-year-old in the dating pool? And this is a completely fair question and a very, very, very common question. But it really upset me. It really reminded me of hearing very similar comments from a lot of clients and experiencing the same sort of thinking in my own life as someone who's turning 42 next month. I'm very keenly aware of the competitive realities that face women as they age, and how those are a little rougher on the nervous system than they are for males. Not that males don't deal with their own issues as they get older, but for women, so much of your mate value is tied up with your physical appearance. As we've discussed on the podcast, I won't get into fully all of the reasons why that is the case in this video, but you're welcome to watch any of the other videos I've made on the topic, or to listen to podcasts back when we've discussed it. Fair question, turning 30 and worried about it, particularly if you're someone who is looking to have children. So if you really know that you want kids, that it really is, 30 is an important moment to be looking at your competitive standing and trying to find the father of your children, essentially, for a lot of women. And there's nothing wrong with that, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to be as competitive as possible to get the best possible mate that you can. But the orientation toward the problem that makes it this kind of full-time job concerns me, because what you should be really using evolutionary psychology to do in life is to optimize your environment for the human that you are. So that's really the theme that goes through everything that we talk about. The first step is always to know thyself. You want to know who you are. What is distinctive about your personality that defines the individual that you are? Because you are a snowflake. You have particular personality features, particular little traits and circuits that make you very much an individual. We talk a lot about all of the things that define human nature broadly, that make humans humans, but within humans, we are all individuals, and we have to honor the things that make us individual, because if we don't recognize those things through tools like behavioral genetics and personality inventories, like the Big Five, if we don't know where we're starting from, then we're in the wrong business, because we're trying to change ourselves to fit our environment. We're trying to learn how to cope with life. We're trying to work on our relationships, rather than recognizing that who we are is fixed and stable, that our personality is largely genetically defined, and we have mountains of evidence to support this, and that the environment interacts with who it is that we are in a way that facilitates the expression of our personality. So obviously we are going to express our personality differently under different conditions, depending on how stressed we are, depending on the kind of position of power we're in, how comfortable we are. All kinds of things are going to modulate the expression of our personality, but our fundamental personality does not change. So you have to know who you are and what you're working with. That is step number one of really diving into the EP world. And then the second thing that follows from that is that you are curating an environment, meaning where you live and who you spend your time with, the people that you surround yourself with, the primary relationships in your life that are honoring who it is that you are. So you're not trying to fit yourself into somebody else's idea of what your life should be. You were accepting all of the sort of gifts and foibles that you are endowed with as a human in the world, and you are working with them as harmoniously as you possibly can as you seek to build your environment. So when it comes to competing with other women for a mate, whether you're 25 or 30 or 35 or 45 or whatever you are, it's the wrong way to look at it, to be trying to profoundly change yourself to become someone else. So you do want to be in a process of setting your compass to the best version of your authentic self that you possibly can be, and working diligently to bring that version of yourself into being, because that is the path to a sense of ongoing achievement and accomplishment and working toward an important competitive goal in your life that will generate feelings of self-esteem and meaning in the world. So that is a very important thing for every human to be doing, whether they're male or female or single or paired up or in any kind of life circumstance. That is essentially at the heart of every relationship that we would have toward any kind of competitive problem. But there is such a difference between orienting yourself toward recognizing who it is that you really are, with all of the limitations that includes, and all of the assets that includes, and having a very realistic relationship to those things, and optimizing within that framework, versus the kind of self-loathing, brutally aspirational orientation that women will get, highly conscientious women will get, toward their bodies, toward their beauty, toward their appearance, that is this notion that if only they could ascend to some imaginary degree of attractiveness, then they will qualify for the mate that they desire. This is the loop that women will get themselves into and torture themselves with for years and decades on end. It is what drives the entire dysfunctional shadow side of the beauty industry and the fitness industry and plastic surgery and everything else that we could talk about. And it is a modern environment distortion to an ancient ancestral problem of trying to work with what you've got, essentially, to be the best version of yourself, both physically and interpersonally and intellectually and everything else that you would want to optimize in order to make the best possible display to the world to show off, I woke up like this, come mate with me. The fact is, if you're a single woman and you're seeking a pair bond, which most single women are, just all things equal, not all of them, some of them are casually mating oriented, and God bless, that's a whole different set of questions. But if you are looking to find a real mate, and particularly if you're looking to have a family and to have children, you are in a situation where, unless you are qualifying with lots of room for error, then you are setting yourself up for a really quite torturous life existence. And I don't want you to do that out of this distorted notion that qualification in the romantic realm is something that can be infinitely hacked and perfected, and that like the difference between weighing 127.4 and 124.6 on the scale, the idea that that is going to make some sort of enormous difference to your life experience is insanity. Your true pair bond, whoever it is that you are, is going to be sufficiently excited about you that the vicissitudes of your physical presentation they're not unimportant. Of course they're important. You want to meet that potential pair bond's threshold of attractiveness. But if you are in a situation where it is such a close call that your qualification is utterly dependent on maintaining forever this very highly perfected version of yourself that is a great burden to you and very high cost to maintain, both emotionally, monetarily, and in every other sense, you are entering into that relationship in a initial position of weakness that is only going to become more of a position of weakness over time as linear time has its way with you. Romantic qualification is not just about some objective measure of how you look. That is an important piece of the story, of course, but only up to a point, only up to a minimum threshold. Beyond that, your qualification for your mate is equal parts your personality and your intellect. It's who you are. It's who you are in that relationship, and it is the emergent dynamic between the two of you. You are not solely responsible for what that thing looks like when it comes into contact with another human being. Whatever a relationship with another human is, it is greater than the sum of its constituent parts. And so in addition to this sort of protean right-brained analysis that we will do of a potential mate, where, okay, are they meeting my minimum thresholds for looks, brains, and personality, there's all the other weird shit that goes on with the pheromone sniffing and the pupil dilation and whether you're ovulating, and so how testosteronized is he and how attracted are you to him in that moment. Like, all this is an insane game. It is amazing that anyone ever finds a meaningful life mate, and it's a very arbitrary and mystical process that you can game to a certain degree, but don't try to game it beyond that, because it will make you crazy. I have clients who are making themselves miserable on a relentless daily basis because they are convinced that there are 6 pounds between where they are now and blissful, happily ever after happiness with the prince of their dreams, because that's what it takes to qualify, because they have centered in on some particular number or some particular BMI or some particular love handle that they want to get rid of or some particular kind of plastic surgery that they think they need to get. And that may be the case for a particular male who is out there on the far end of the bell curve, who has such specific requirements physically that you would have to meet all of those things to qualify for him. But the odds that you would then also qualify for him with your personality and your intellect, after you go to all of the self-loathing trouble to profoundly change yourself, those odds are very small. But all of this is difficult to talk about because I'm running the risk, I'm aware that I'm running the risk of being perceived as veering into a very ego-trappy, enlightenment-trappy domain where it's your outer beauty doesn't matter, it's what's inside that counts, he should love you no matter what you look like. That is also BS. So the truth is in the middle here. The truth is that it does matter what you look like, but it also matters who you are, and you don't have as much control over how that is going to be interpreted by a potential mate as you might like to think that you do. But for a highly conscientious, highly intelligent, highly diligent young woman who is earnestly looking for a romantic pair bond and even a father of her children and to make a family with someone, this is just an utterly perfect storm of circumstances to sell out her enjoyment of her life and the world that she, as I gestured to the parking lot of my hotel, I mean, this is not utopia, but you get my point. One of the lessons of COVID-19 is that life is very precious, that our enjoyment of our life and our circumstances and our relationships and how we spend our days is a fragile thing. And if you are trading that fragile thing for essentially for some uncertain future because you are devoting yourself to perfecting an imaginary ideal, you are in the wrong business. And it's unlikely to work. And even if it does work, you will have traded away years of time and energy, the only resources that you have in, as far as we know, the only lifetime that you get. I hope that clarifies some of the points I was trying to make the other night. I'm going to wrap this up because my car is getting very warm, but I am looking forward to discussing this a lot more. I think this is such a huge, important topic. The evolutionary psychology is such an incredibly powerful tool for changing your life and living your best possible life. And it is a tragedy to have it misused in any particular individual's existence in this way. And I think that this is also the area in which EP deters a lot of women who would otherwise benefit enormously from all of the insights that EP has to offer them in their romantic relationships, but also their friendships, their professional life. I mean, this is an incredible set of tools that has utterly changed my life and has been profoundly important for so many clients. And it is this one area in the way that it is interpreted by women in a certain set of life circumstances with certain personality traits that can be very self-defeating and lead to unintended consequences that don't have to happen. And so it's really important to me on a personal level and a professional level to help women understand this and to not throw the baby out with the bathwater, because there's so much value here in what we're talking about, and there is so much truth in what we talk about with male-female dynamics, that it doesn't need to be interpreted in this quasi-misogynistic, incel-adjacent sort of way that is going to amount to you completely sabotaging the enjoyment of your own life. Please do reach out to me if you are interested in hearing me rant about any other facets of this particular problem or anything else. My hotel lockdown life allows me to rant at will, so I'm very happy to address any specific questions that folks have. You can also, of course, always just email me and set up a personal consult. I'm very happy to do that as well. And I just wish you all the best, and go smell the roses sometimes. Okay.